Welcome to The Truth About Ag. Welcome to the Truth About Ag podcast, distributed under the Real Agriculture Media Network and powered by the Hebert Group of Companies. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And remember that you're also brought to you by Farmer Coach, the only entrepreneur producing coaching program in Canada, and Maverick Ag. Let us help you build your legacy. So, as I say this every time, we've got a special guest on today. And I'm going to take it back to Farmer Coach. We have a line in Farmer Coach that we use a lot now. And the line is, you got to get yourself a Jeff. So that's where we're going to go today. We've got COO Jeff Warkentin of the Hebert Group on, and I'm going to quiz him a bit on backstory, how he joined it and why he joined, and then give me a little bit of dirt on Christian that I might not know about. So Jeff's been there a little longer than I have, so I get a little history lesson today. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Give me the story of Jeff Warkentin.
Basically, I grew up on a family farm at Verdun, Manitoba. Once I graduated high school, I went to the U of M and took agriculture. My diploma, started working for United Grain Growers, and couldn't hold a job. I moved around through a lot of the grain companies, sold crop inputs, ran grain facilities, moved to a lot of the finer spots in Saskatchewan, and landed up in Mooseman. And truth be told, I went through a divorce and I needed some extra money. So I'd met Christian and his dad, and I started working after hours and on weekends for them, and did that for probably 4 or 5 years. And, we became pretty good friends in the process. And we were drinking beer at the lake and dreaming up ways that we could conquer the world, kind of like Pinky and the Brain. And, eventually we came to an agreement, and it'll be 8 years in January, I believe, since I've been here full time. So yeah, things have changed a lot over those 8 years, and it's been quite a ride.
So I like how you mentioned the story of this was not a big hiring. This was not the usual C-suite corporate. It was over a beer at the lake. So Christian, give me your your aspect of how this came to be and why you even thought you needed a COO, because that's usually where most guys start, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we probably talked about it a little bit before. Like, my theory on HR is maybe a little different than all the business books you read, where you just come up with a skill set and then send out headhunters and find the right people. And I kind of think that's bullshit. Actually, I'm more of a sniper rifle approach, right? If you find good people, you just hire them. I don't care if they're looking for jobs or not. And in most cases, most really good people aren't looking for jobs. They have a good job. So I don't know. I guess I've always kind of been on the hunt for people that fit our culture. And let's be honest, we talk about it all the time. It's a sports team culture. You're looking for good players in every position. And I could see that one of, my ceilings was going to be, if you want to be the strategic dreamer and have operational efficiency and do HR, you're going to suck at least one of the three, if not two of the three, because you simply aren't going to have enough time. So that was probably why I started looking down the path of COO. And then, we've kind of carried on with this tradition when we've basically succumbed to the fact we are going to grow. It's not necessarily in acres, could be in value add, could be in consulting, could be in, Farmer Coach. But we'd rather have people early so that we're training them, not like in the middle of a big growth period. It's right before the growth period. So the timing all just kind of hit that, I needed to have a key hire at the time, and I could have followed most farm paths and just picked up another operator, right? Or a part-timer to just come for the growing season, but that wasn't what I was looking for. At the same time, I think Global Ag Risk was firing on most cylinders at that time too. So I was traveling lots. I had little kids. So yeah, I think Jeff might even still have the sheet. We were 8 years ago, we were probably only about 8 to 10,000 acres. And him and I had it drawn out that if we could get to 16-ish and hit these profit levels, our plan was going to work. I couldn't really afford them at the time, but the plan we kind of drew out at 16,000, it was going to meet kind of both our goals. And obviously it's a little bit different than that.
I think the funny part is I don't think it was a piece of paper. If I looked in my office, I think it was actually a paper plate.
Yeah.
We wrote it down on one night around the campfire.
So, I mean, I've been around the industry long enough to know that, and nobody take this literally, but HR and agriculture, we suck. We're really bad at it. And it's probably the one skill that guys ask me the most about. So, I mean, from an aspect, Jeff, I spent a little time out at the farm this fall, and I wouldn't trade you jobs if you paid me to do it. So tell me how you got into the HR side and why you're good at it. And don't be humble. Tell me, because guys are going to ask the question of how do you do it?
I guess I revert back to the saying that, managing people would be an easy job if it wasn't for the people, right? But, if you want to grow your business, we use 2,500 acres for a full-time employee. So if you don't want to be managing people, then you should get 2,500 acres and do everything yourself. But I mean, we've chosen the path to grow, and we recognize that we need good people. We made that decision. So now the onus is on us to work with those people and mentor them along. I mean, we've seen some fluctuations in our business, and we quite often talk about the awkward stages of the business where there's just not enough decisions to go around, and then we've seen where our growth fixes some of that. As we expand, there's more decisions, people are busier, and a lot of our HR problems go away. So I would say that, the growth, Christian alluded to it earlier, finding good people and then fitting them into the organization. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it takes a couple of years for people to get their feet underneath them. And then as we build the trust, the team strengthens and the whole business becomes stronger. So
when you go from an industry where you're managing hundreds of people and unionized people, even to say more, how do you make the shift to managing a team? I mean, back then it was probably 2 or 3, and even today it's, let's call it 15 to 20 during busy season. How do you make that shift?
Like I say, it took a lot of getting used to. The difference is I kind of worked arm's length with people at a larger company. And now, I mean, the people you're managing, you're working shoulder to shoulder with every day. So I actually found that I built a really strong rapport by doing that with people every day. And they say you can't be the boss and the buddy, but I disagree with that. I mean, we always got along. We had that mutual respect. But when the time came, they knew who the boss was, right? So that still continues today.
I think, Evan, that's, the thing that I noticed, and probably the reason, that I kind of started talking to Jeff was, one, he was very focused on efficiency. And even when he was running the Viterra crib near us, we could tell by the throughput and how much it went up when he was there. But I got to know him good enough that obviously you could see his frustration that he couldn't fix all the efficiency problems because of corporate protocol and union contracts, right? There's just certain things you couldn't fix. And I mean, so that was kind of one of my things to him was like, what if you just were only focused on efficiency and profit and you didn't have all that other stuff? Like basically you got a red light and green light to hire and fire at your will. Just make sure you can explain it to me. But other than that, you don't even have to let me know first. Right. And you could see, I can see in him like efficiency is a big thing. And so the fact his hands weren't tied, I could see him grow from when he left Viterra to come to us. Right. And it also, we're probably going to go into this, but it also, I would say, is one of the reasons kind of helped with our succession plan a whole bunch, right? Louis,
I'm going there.
Dad in particular, I mean, it's all hunky dory now because it's all kind of come together, but there was times, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to put words in Louis' mouth and one day we'll have him on the podcast, but my parents, but Louis in particular, thought I was crazy quite a few days. And not crazy as in it couldn't happen, just crazy as in, Dad wasn't great with people. And so it was hard for him to see, like, okay, so we're going to grow and it's going to make life easier. I'm struggling with this. Right. And we're going to leave her a little higher here and there. But one of the big things I think that he was struggling with is he had seen so many farms grow or move to the next generation, and the little things didn't matter anymore, right? The grain bags didn't get cleaned up. The dirt work projects never got started. It just, the kids started living on Dad's rent-free land and just hit cruise control and didn't continue with the little things, right? And that hybrid where I believe in the little things maybe more than anybody on our whole farm, but I also know you can't have our farm and I can't go do them all. But what I can do is allocate budget and resources and kind of get the process around it. So kind of when I got my head around what the process should look like, then I just give it to Jeff and Louis. And I mean, we honestly get more little things done now than we ever haven't ever, because Louis likes the little things. Jeff is really good at allocating the people, and I'll kind of make up the budget and the process on how to do it. Jeff, you can comment on it, but I think that's honestly kind of one of our special sauces is the hybrid between mine and Jeff's and Louis' personalities.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, we've each got our different strengths, but I mean, we're very focused on execution and the small details. And I believe, the small details are what makes us successful at the end of the day.
So I get called on this all the time and said, I mean, the word bullshit's come out a few times, but I want you to give the actual, I mean, we know that we're good at a lot of things, but I want to hear the bad side of coming into a family farm with father and son and kind of almost being pushed right into a leadership role or an in-charge role when there's family involved. So give me that side.
It's easy to look back, but I mean, luckily I was good at being part of awkward conversations. I mean, because there's a lot of that in the beginning, right? I think what was different is even though they're family, Christian and Louis treated the farm as a business, and when they were making decisions, that's how they talked, and that's how I would say. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Christian, but I mean, I think that's how you guys actually worked through a lot of the issues. And I mean, it took a couple years for everybody to find their lane, but once we found it, I think it sped the treadmill of success up a lot.
Any comment with that one, Hebert?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I would go with Louis and I'd say both our strength isn't just automatically trusting people, right? But once we trust people, we'll probably trust them more than anybody on earth, right? So I knew Jeff better than Louis. So it took the two of them a little while to get through, but I also know that Dad and I are enough alike. I knew what the outcome was going to be, right? And so kind of once they got to that level of trust, I could watch them kind of fly along the way Jeff and I did, or the way you and I do, right? No different than when I brought you on. You and Jeff didn't really know each other, right? And it like there's a year of, if you're going to deal with people that are good at business, you got to get used to awkward, and because it's not conflict, it's awkward. It's people that trust you and that are good at what they do will ask you questions you don't necessarily want to hear, but it's not that it's a bad question. It's actually a really good question, and most businesses we see fail or are in trouble or succession plans is because that question actually never gets asked, and then specifically. They just can't separate business from life. And I'm sorry, awkward life should not create awkward business, right? It's why lots of companies have the rule that there's no intercompany relationships, and that's not even family. That's just you shouldn't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend at work, right? It is because they don't want drama from outside life to cause drama in the business. So we've always kept it real focused on the business at business. And I mean, obviously, as you're going through succession plans, there's awkward conversations when it comes to business and family, right? But I think too, the last piece, I mean, Dean Klippenstein once said when we first did our succession plan, I mean, I don't know how much I'm supposed to swear, but he literally looked at Louis and said, "I'm glad you're an asshole because Christian's one, and you can need two of them to negotiate properly so that one doesn't walk all over the other." And that's honestly the thing, is that there were some super awkward conversations, right? But we both had the best interest of the business and each other, at heart. And then, when needed, Teresa and Karen were there to help kind of maybe mediate the odd time we butted heads too hard, right? But in most cases, we both wanted the same outcome, which was the farm to be here forever, right? And that to be part of the legacy. And so that just means you just keep going back to the table, right? You figure it out.
As weird as it may sound too, I actually came to relish the awkward conversations, because, it wasn't so much in the beginning. You maybe take it as people challenging you, but now, I mean, they're asking questions to make sure I have a plan, right? And as long as you've got a plan and you've thought it through, then that's all they're looking for. I mean, no different than you, Evan. I remember when you first came on and we started doing the meetings. I mean, you'd get red in the face, when we started challenging you or
still
arguing,
do.
right? So I mean, you were a crappy poker player because you turn red as a beet. So,
and I'd like to say I still do.
Yeah, sometimes.
So I want to go back. I mean, I know when I came on here, my wife, my family thought I was nuts leaving a good paying job at MNP to take a chance on farming again. But give me your assessment of, I know you guys met, you trusted and stuff, and why you came across, but how hard was it to leave a good corporate job with a strong pension and jump back into private life?
Well, the hard part for me, I was in my early 40s, so I wasn't a spring chicken anymore. But so I was kind of at a crossroads. I wouldn't call it a midlife crisis, but I mean, I was to that point in the company where I realized I wasn't going to get the keys to the corporate washroom. I wasn't going to be the CEO. So really, I had a choice to make. Could I have sat there and coasted it out for the next 20 years and, coasted into retirement? Or do you start a new adventure that reinvigorates you? And I felt it kept me pretty young the last 10 years. So that was really the decision. I mean, do you want to mail it in and coast it for the rest of your life, or do you want to keep active and keep your brain active and be involved in something pretty exciting every day?
And Christian, from your side, I mean, how do you bring on someone at Jeff's level? Because most farms, like you said, they go down to the local store and try to pick out as many people as they can at the lowest price. How do you bring across someone at that experience of an HR level, or, for example, myself at the finance level? Like, what's your thinking on that?
Well, I mean, the business side of me says a person's worth what somebody else will pay them, right? And I think in agriculture, and don't get me wrong, you can have the value conversation, right? If they provide more value. And I mean, how much have we talked about that, right? My new line is, if you have an ownership mindset and you make Christian's life easier, right, and you are willing to manage a bunch of people, you're worth more than what other people would pay you, right? But your base worth is what someone will write you a check for. And so I think too many times operations think they should, steal a really good person, and then they find out what they're making and offer them a 3/4 and say, yeah, but it'll be better. No, like, I'll pay you what you're getting paid, and it will be better, because I can not have the co-op mentality. I can not have unions. I can, to be honest, in general, I like to change and move really fast. And so I'm not going to question the change you want to make, as long as you have a plan and it follows kind of my vision. In fact, I'm probably going to push you to make more plans, not the other way around, right? And that, I guess, in my mind, when you're trying to move people from corporate into entrepreneurial, the number one thing is, like, do you think they believe, right? Because when they make the decision to leave, that's really what they're saying is, I believe in you and I believe in where your company's going. And so then it's just a matter of numbers, and they don't deserve less money, right? So how do you get to the same money at least and show upside? And the upside probably doesn't even have to be a whole bunch bigger than it was at the company, because the upside is in their self value, and that they actually more or less kind of get to be their own boss and in charge of their own destiny, I think is kind of some of the main, the main points that I try to focus on.
I think Christian has to remind me from time to time, you pay for what you get too. I mean, if we pay more for good employees, I mean, we get a lot of productivity out of those employees, and they're easier to manage. So, I mean, that's probably one thing he has to remind me of every now and again.
Well, I think we've seen that. I mean, you said our benchmark was 2,500, and I think the last time we met, we may have even pushed it to 3,000, because as we've gotten larger and as our employees have stuck around because of the compensation and the value and being part of it, I think we've actually gotten better and more efficient as each employee.
Yeah.
So
that doesn't mean you can take away my staffing budget for next year. So.
That's what I'm working on. So most farms, I mean, you said you brought them on at about 7,000 acre seams. Most farms at 7,000, CO is not even in their definition of somebody they need. So I want you to give me your job description. What do you do? Because most people, they hear C-suite and they're just guessing at what your daily is. So give the listeners exactly what, if you could tell me what you do day in, day out, what's your job?
Well, that's a good question, and that's a hard one to answer. I guess my main focus on a daily basis is organizing and trying to make us as efficient as we can be on a daily basis. The night before every workday, we kind of set the table of where everybody's going to start in the morning, so that it's not drive to the shop and then have coffee for half an hour and then decide what to do. I mean, we set the table the night before. I prioritize where we need to place our human assets and our machinery assets as well. So my main focus is to keep us as organized as we can. Obviously, there's controlling costs, there's marketing of grain, but I would say the organizational capacity is my main focus.
I think, Evan, right, one of the things when we went through our last kind of annual together and going through goals and mission and all that, one thing we added in is actually executing what we say we're going to do, right? And so sometimes I get myself in situations where I'm calling a bluff on a CEO and I say we can do that. Well, the reason I can get in those situations is then I tell Jeff and he makes sure we get it done, right? And there's too many times where the same person is wearing both the strategy and the execution hat, and some of the stuff you say doesn't get done, and then that loses trust and respect in the marketplace, right? And so I think that, that's a pretty important part. And then, I mean, the other one I'd talk about probably, and Jeff and I haven't quite finalized it, but we've kind of got to the point that, like, really the farm's just a big project management company. Think of Graham Construction or someone like that, right? They can have 30 different projects on with different crews, and really, the grain farm, it's a 52-week business, and day one is the day we start seeding. And actually, what we do each week all year probably only varies plus or minus 1 week if you had day one be the first day of seeding, which means that long term, you could get to the point that it's pretty franchisable, because you could have a process system laid out week to week that starts day one of seeding and just shifts a week one side or the other. And I never saw that, until I watched Jeff go to work. And if anyone's ever at the farm, you can come check it out. We got a whole wall painted into a whiteboard that kind of runs our life. And everyone will say it should all be online. And sure, you can tell me whatever you want. But most operational, efficient people actually like to feel in touch what's in front of them, right? So the whiteboard really fills that. And you can just watch that whiteboard move throughout the year. And like I said, we're only a year or two away from having a 52-week plan that just starts the day we start seeding.
Well, and I think a lot of people forget, I mean, we're a big logistics company. Like, whether you want to call us a farm or a food productivity or however you want to call it, when I was down there watching Jeff at work this fall, it's just a big logistics company. You have your people assets, you have your capital assets, and you're literally everyday scheduling where they're going and what they're doing. And I mean, we even talked about trucking, Jeff. I mean, I think we have 5 loads a day or a work day from now until October 1st. Mm-hmm. Like, we're bigger than some trucking companies.
Yeah. And as we've grown, and I've got 4 managers underneath me, it's a constant tug of war for people and assets and that. So you kind of become the referee because everybody that's working on a project thinks that's the most important project of the day. So they want to take all the people and get it done and stroke it off their list. So I mean, they need me to help prioritize every day, and I decide what the priority of the day is.
And the part I think I like the best is that those 4, and including some of the ones under me, they want to take your job, Jeff.
Well, they think
Yeah.
they do. Yeah. Actually, and you want to know what the funny part, Evan? You talk about most farms, are fine the fact that I hired a COO or a farm manager, whatever you want to call it, early. We call it COO so that the corporate world understands, right? The best part is that the industry doesn't know what to do with it, right? So, I mean, as we grow and we're pretty big on relationships, I mean, we kind of say that's one of our number one things. There's certain meetings, that I can't go to, or Jeff's the right person and we don't want to miss them. So Jeff goes, and even some of the big ones. I mean, Jeff and his fiance have went to a couple of the 3-4 day winter ones. And like 3-4 years ago, the companies would be like, we kind of wanted you, Christian. I'd be like, yeah, but you already showed me the agenda. Like, Jeff knows more about all the stuff on this agenda than I do. Like, that it falls under his role. And to be honest, I can tell you right now, if there's 15 farms in the room, Jeff's going to do most of the talking to those questions because they're going to start asking them. And they'd give me the eye, right? And now we just like on all that level of meetings, chemical companies, machinery companies, etc. We interchange, right? The odd one we're at together, right? Because we have to be, but lots of them, like, there's no use us both being in the room anymore. Yeah. And it took us a year or two to get it through industry's head, and that's with a guy like Jeff had a pretty big network in the industry already. Like, lots of people knew who he was, and so I think too, the industry. We talk about this kind of 2%. It used to be the 80-20 rule, and I mean, I'm a firm believer now. Like, there's 2% of small businesses in the world of agriculture that are a decade ahead. There's 18% that are doing awesome, and we need to do everything we can to keep them doing awesome. And there's 80% that, grandpa owns all the land, you're not paying any rent, and it's coasting, and they got to decide which one they want to be. And the industry doesn't know how to deal with that.
I guess early on we realized that managing relationships was going to be the key to our success. So actually, Christian and Louis and I sat down and kind of divvied up who would manage each relationship and who was responsible for that contact.
Well, and I think a big part of it is that I think all 3 of us have realized that there's a big, let's call it a positive to being humble, which is you don't want to be the one at the front of the room all the time. So, I mean, handing off those relationships not only allows somebody else in the group to take it on and take the responsibility, but it also allows the company to continue growing. Because if Christian ran every single relationship in this company, it would be A, he'd hate his life, and B, we'd never know anybody. And if something were to ever happen, we have a real key man issue then, is because he'd be running every single deal we ever did, right?
Well, and I think too that, like, I mean, Evan, you were on. We did a call with the PR team yesterday, and I mean, it took them a year to understand that I actually don't really like it, right? Like, I did public speaking and stuff, and it was a favor to a mentor, Danny Kleinfelter, right, to get into it. And then I kept getting asked, and like the only reason I kept doing it is because we'd get lots of resumes, and I'd meet people, not because I actually want to be on stage. If in a perfect world, I wouldn't be on the front of anything, to be honest. I don't like it, but at the same time, we value relationships. We want lots of resumes, right? And we want influence in the areas where we think it's going to affect our operation. And you can't be unknown to have that happen. But then as you grow, you can't do that all yourself, right? And areas where my team's stronger than me, like, Christ, the faster I can delegate it, the better.
Well, and I think it's been no surprise. I mean, Heaves, you and I both watch the Kelsey podcast, and they always have the segment of welcome to the NFL. So it's kind of their moment of when guys actually, whether they took a big hit or what it was. So I want to do the same thing on your side, Jeff, except I want the big aha moment was welcome back to the farming industry. What's the moment where you kind of were like, okay, this is how it's going to be?
Well, as simple as it sounds, I remember the day clear as a bell. I'd probably been at the farm for 9 months, and we started into harvest, and I was so worried, um, about everything being perfect that I'd worked myself into a knot, and subsequently stopped thinking. And as I was shoveling a grain pile up the one morning outside a bin that I'd left the door open, Louis came up to me, and he just looked at me. He said, "What's up? What's going on?" And he said, he actually said to me that I want this to work. And we had a conversation, and for me, that's kind of what turned the tide. And then I felt like we all started rowing in the same direction after that conversation. So it's something simple, but it was, it's what I needed to get my head wrapped around things.
So what I'm starting to get from this, Christian, is Louis had his moment with me, which I've told on other podcasts, and had his moment with Jeff. What do you do? Because it seems like Louis is the reason we're both here.
You want to know what? I'm so good with not doing anything, or at least not anybody knowing what I do. I'm good with that. Well, but you go back. So the one line that Louis told everybody on the farm, and it's, in my mind, it's one of his best lines, right? Is that he, whether it's seeding or harvest or the year, Louis, he's pretty passionate and get a little worked up, and you might see him run across the yard more than walk, right? And so it can add a little stress to people sometimes. But the biggest issue is then everybody tries to copy that speed and forgets that there's 50 some years of experience behind the speed, right? So then he always reminds everybody, right? Like, it's a marathon, not a 100-meter race. So pick the pace that you can handle for the next 30 or 40 days and stay there. Don't go high and then go low and then go high, right? And it's one of his, it's one of his best lines. But I mean, it's just, like I said, again, I could care less about belt buckles, right? And in fact, I just want to empower people to do what they're good at, right? And so I also talk about the line, that Louis told me that they had built a monster, and he wasn't good with people, and it was gonna eat him alive, kind of thing. Like, they were growing, but he couldn't handle the people. And so that's the part I got good at, right? Was, where are we going? How many people do we need to do it? And what kind of money do we need to pull it off? But just because I can figure that part out doesn't mean I'm the one to go do all the other parts, right? And he's always been kind of my, you call it yin and yang, right? Is that I'm pretty good at getting people to buy into the dream, even if I don't have any goddamn idea how we're going to get there yet. And so then he's good at just making sure people have thought through, I know you buy into his dream, but can you help him get there? Right. And because that it's an important question, right? Because you two have been around me long enough. Like, I got a pretty good idea where we're going, but most days I really actually don't know how we're going to get there, because I'm 4 meetings or 5 whiteboards or 2 years away from figuring that out. Right.
Yeah. So I spent quite a bit of time with you, obviously, in the last 5 years, Jeff. And I mean, we spent a week down at TPAP last year together. And so I want the Jeff Warkentin words of wisdom. I want you to teach how do farms do this? How do they build teams? How do they do the HR part? Because honestly, that's the number one question I get asked. It's not about finance. It's not about succession. It's, how do you deal with people?
Well, my favorite line from TPAP last year was, sometimes people's feelings are collateral damage when getting things done. Obviously what took me a little while to realize is we were hiring good people at the farm. I'll use one in particular. So he was a rig manager, push on the rigs, had 10, 20 people. And then he comes to the farm. He's used to making all his own decisions, running his own show. And then we try and micromanage him. And it took me a while to realize, what that does to his psyche. So, I mean, it's taken a while, but I mean, we're delegating tasks to people. We're holding them accountable. And I would say in the last 6 months, we've really seen that blossom within the organization. They're taking on more roles. They want to take jobs from me, not just to say to go to town and tell people they manage people, but I mean they want to see the business improve. So I mean that's the kind of culture we've created, and it takes years to build a culture, but ultimately that's what drives our success, I believe.
I think the other one that I've heard you say once in a while, or maybe it was you, Christian, was hire slow, fire fast. I think that was the quote of the day one day.
Yeah. That one's Christian's.
Yeah.
And I mean that goes to any small business, right? In general, people find more work, so they take on a big new job. You know, they take on more land. The world of consulting, they do an RFP for something they can't handle, then they get it, and then they go, oh shit, right? And so they put a job ad out and they just hire warm bodies, not good people, right? And then they keep them too long and don't realize that it's just a cancer, right, flooding through the organization. And really, you got to flip that on its head and kind of say, here's where we're going. And you have to believe in yourself enough that you're going there, because in your long-term income and expense, it's not going to make sense without the growth there yet, right? It's actually going to make you less money this year, but you have to, like, goddamn believe it, and then get the good people, right, and keep them, but take a while to find them. And if you get a bad one, just pull the goddamn Band-Aid off and get rid of them, because it's not helping.
Another thing we kind of found is that you get in a trap of hoarding decisions to make yourself feel important, where that is not the right mentality. I mean we've got good people, so they make the decisions, and basically now if they run into a problem and they need to go up the chain to solve it or whatnot, that's when they get Christian and myself involved. We've worked hard to dig deep ditches for them. They know where the boundaries are, and when they get to the boundary, if they have trouble, that's when they come talk to us.
Okay, so we've done, I think this is a 18th podcast now, Hebes, and I came to the conclusion, or we came to the conclusion, that you asked the same goddamn question every single time. So I'm going to throw this one out to Jeff. So next 5 years in the industry, and you've been in the industry long enough to be able to answer this, where do you see the industry going? What are you doing right now to get there? And the last one is, what are you not going to change to get there?
I mean, the obvious answer is there's going to be a lot of consolidation within the primary ag industry. I mean, that's a given. With the relative age of farmers, I mean, we're going to see that expedited. So I guess probably the biggest thing that we worry, or I worry about, is policy. I mean, we've seen what tariff talk can do to our prices, can do to profitability. So I'm really hoping that rectifies itself in the fall of 25, but I don't have control over that. So I mean, we've got to get involved so we can help steer the agriculture ship. Christian works at a high level with a lot of people trying to help determine the future of agriculture. Back to the consolidation, I think we stay the course. We're hiring good people all the time, and we're prepared for that expansion. So, I mean, we've had how many opportunities come up a month, even 6 days before seeding, and we've been able to act on it because we've got the people. Christian's done the legwork to make sure the capital's in place. So, I mean, we need to continue to focus on that. Margins are going to tighten up for a few years here by the looks of it. So we need to pay attention. We need to watch the little things that are going to make us profitable. So.
Okay, I called this one the holiday special when I was throwing it out there Monday. So I do want a little Christmas cheer. So if each of you could have a present for next year, what are you asking Santa Claus for the 2025 crop year? And do not say $30 canola, because Santa cannot deliver $30 canola.
I would say the yields that we had last year that compensates for the $30 canola. So
You just pissed off half the people listening, just so you know.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Hebes?
Yeah, you want to know? I kind of think you determine your own destiny when it comes to corporate profits, etc. And don't get me wrong, we rely on Mother Nature and markets, but if we could have a team come out of next year, 100% safe and healthy and feel that they excelled in their jobs, I can look you back in the face and say, we'll find a way to make money, right? If I realize that there's a bunch of volatility we have to manage through, but if our team feels valued and keeps continuing to grow in their roles, I mean, there's days right now that operationally, well, most days right now operationally, I just go out because I feel guilty, not because I'm needed, right? So if 2025 operationally I'm not needed very much, everyone feels valued in their role, and they come out the end of the year safe and healthy, 25 will be just fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say if we could replicate the team that we had last year, I look at all the young guys that we had on. We had, I think, 5 kids from New Zealand, a kid from Germany, a kid from Syast. They all fit in so well. If we can replicate that team, I think we'll set ourselves up for success.
So now, since you opened that up, how do you mentor and how do you keep the culture when you've got, I mean, we've got some guys over the age of 40, some guys, like you said, just coming out of school or from over in New Zealand, and cultural differences. How do you do that, Jeff? Because that I see that on family farms a lot, is they get overseas coming across, and how do you mold the culture so that we don't lose what we currently have built?
Well, I think I would say Christian, Louis, and myself have helped to drive the culture thus far. As we expand with more people, we're not working shoulder to shoulder with as many of the younger guys. So we're going to rely on the 4 managers to help drive that culture for us. So, longevity is going to help us build that culture with those employees. So now we're trying to mentor the 4 managers to help drive down to the new employees what we've driven into them for the last how many years. So
if I could shrink that down, if it's a small family farm and they're bringing across their first employee, it's more or less get on the same page, have a vision, have some values that you can at least push on to the new employees and new hires so they feel like they're part of something. Is that kind of what I'm getting?
Well, we call it management by walk around. So I mean, we're out shoulder to shoulder with people. As I said, as we grow, it becomes less and less. But we've instilled that culture in the next managers. So I mean, they're going to help drive it, and we need to coach them through it. But yeah, when you got 1 or 2 employees, you lead by example. So I mean, they're gonna emulate what you do. So,
well, I think, Evan, it goes back to ownership mentality, right? Like, you need to explain why the little things matter, right? You need to explain what it took to get to where you are, because I think there's too many people in this world that want the outcome of which is today in a successful business. They don't want to do the hard work it took to get there, right? So if I go way back, 24-hour seating was one of the things we implemented years ago that people thought we were nuts, right? It was one of the first ones. But I mean, Louis and Jeff and Chad, one of the managers, that they were there when we first implemented it, and we did not have enough people. And our theory of 24-hour seating was, I had a sleeping bag and a pillow in the 4-wheel drive, and I slept while Louis filled it. And Jeff came out at night so we could get Louis to sleep for a little bit. Like that.
You're not supposed to tell people all the bad stories.
Yeah, but I mean,
only the good ones.
But that's where it started. And then, to be honest, then Chad came on board, and he took a hiatus in the oil patch in the middle. But when he came on board, that was my first time I had 2 operators of the drill, right? And so now, once you kind of figured out one drill, whether you're running 1 or 4, it's the same lessons. And so last year's the first year ever that I haven't ran a drill, and I love it. But we had 8 good operators, so there's no use me running a drill. And we had 8, not 6, not 7. If there's 6 or 7, I jump in one, because I've been through it when you don't have enough operators. But then those people that know those stories, just like, Josh and Dustin and Travis all have stories of some like Dustin and Trav talk all the time of what our semi fleet looked like when they first started compared to what it is now. And so they all have stories because of our growth of where it was to where it is, right? And to be honest, it's the stories and it's the stories that grow the culture so that you don't lose it. And it's the explaining why you clean a bin out perfectly so that it's not full of bugs or rotten grain, or every farm we end up taking over has that in their bins, right? That's what drives the culture. And you can't be around to tell that story all the time. So you have to understand why that's important to teach your management group those stories. And then if they have my stories, then Jeff now has all his own stories that adds. In theory, your management group should have 3 times as many stories as you did, because they're learning from 3 or 4 people above them. And the culture can actually get better, right, as you grow. And that's kind of the neat part to watch.
New employees come and they see where we are today. They see the end result, but they don't know all the journey to get to that point. They see the new 4-wheel drives. They see, some new trucks right now, but they don't know the journey it took to get to that point. So, yeah, we tell the stories all the time.
You remember Woody, Jeff? When Jeff first started helping me,
yeah.
I bought it's like a 1986 GM truck from my father-in-law, put a toolbox in it. That was our service truck. Like,
yeah.
I mean, but people as you got to tell those stories to remind where we were. And then what it shows though, is that 1, we do what we say we're going to do, right? We say we're going to keep moving forward, hopefully in the right direction. And 2, we invest in our future, right? Yes, we want to be profitable, but we don't strip the income and expense sheet so bad that nothing changes. No, we have meetings pretty regularly of what we need to invest in to be better next year. And whether that be a new bin, whether that be a new computer system, whether that just be an upgraded toolbox on a tractor to save us 10 minutes when we're fixing a shank, those conversations have to happen.
Yeah, the other thing I remember from TFAP, Jeff, and I know you took this one, and I honestly glazed over and didn't even think of it because I'm not at the farm enough, but the safety one, the how many close calls do you have in a year? So give me your application on what you took out of TPAP on that, and what we're doing at the farm right now because of it.
Well, it was kind of ironic because just before we went to TPAP, we had a couple incidents that could have went really bad. So, I mean, when I got to TPAP and I got thinking about things, I mean, safety is probably one area where we've been lacking. So we've, as we roll into the winter months, I mean, we're gonna build a safety program and get a base for it anyway. Chad Hebert, he's actually worked on the pipeline. He's got a lot of experience around safety, obviously, so he's going to help spearhead that. But I think the first step is talking about the near misses we have and how we prevent them going forward, because there's no sense paying the tuition twice.
I think the one other thing I have too, right, the minute we kind of talked about this when Jeff got back, is that the first and most simplest step when it comes to safety is you always work in teams and not by yourself, right? And whether that be you catch a finger or you fall off a bin, right? Like if you're by yourself, you're screwed, right? And I don't want to even have the first piece happen, but I don't want the end result of it happen and now we don't have anybody there to help, right? And I would say that it probably led out of safety, but we've seen a pretty big spin-off. I mean, everybody stays a lot happier, even if you're doing a bad job, if you're working in a team of 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, but like a minimum 2. If you're doing something you don't like by yourself, you can get in a bad mood real fast, right? So it kind of started from safety and spun into efficiency.
Well, I think we've seen that with some of the team members, right? Like you said, is once you make sure they're in a team and they're not off on their own somewhere, it really adds to the enjoyment in the job.
One thing we've driven home too is it's okay to say no. If you don't feel comfortable doing a job, say no. I mean, we're not putting a ladder in a bucket and raising it as high as we can on a tractor to change a light bulb. I mean, no, we're going to Flammans, we're renting a lift, and we're doing it right. We've got a young fella today. He doesn't feel comfortable driving on the roads to go to Yorkton. So when we're done, I'm going to take the truck and go for him, right? So we just don't want to put someone in a situation where they feel like they can fail.
You tell that ladder and bucket story like we've done it before.
Yeah, I'm not going to put any names to that one, but there is a story behind it.
Okay, I that's my questions for today, Christian. Unless you got something else you want to throw in here before we close this up.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think in general, what I'd want operations and small business to take out of it is like, don't be afraid of people, right? One, don't be afraid of people. Two, quit feeling guilty if you're not doing it yourself. And three, if you really want to confuse yourself, try to figure out that growth actually fixes problems. And the way it does that is if you hire great people, then you can actually grow into delegating more decisions, which is what they want, right? And those would be kind of my three big takeaways that I think, I wish I probably would have figured out 10 years earlier than I did.
And Jeff, since you're the elderly one on today, why don't you give us your last words?
Yeah, I guess I would look at it the other way. I mean, for people working for a large company, I mean, don't be scared to take a risk. And I remember when I left and joined Christian. I mean, I had a handful of people phone and to ask why I got fired, right? But so they didn't realize, they didn't understand what our arrangement was. There's a lot of opportunity in primary ag, so don't count primary ag out. I see so much opportunity in the years to come. I mean, it's going to be amazing. So
well spoken, because I'm pretty sure all three of us have the same story when we when we said we were leaving. So
yeah.
Okay, thanks again, Jeff, for joining us today. I mean, I wanted to have you on for quite a while to explain the "Get Yourself a Jeff" quote that everybody in Farmer Coach now knows, but I just thank you and happy holidays to anybody listening. That's the truth about ag.
I just thought somebody backed out on you.
We wouldn't tell you if that was the case anyway.
Yeah, fair enough.
Thanks for joining us. The Truth About Ag podcast is a proud member of the Hebert Group, which includes Hebert Grain Ventures, Maverick Ag, and Farmer Coach. We appreciate the support. Lastly, please like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. And if you have questions for a future podcast, please leave in the comments below. Thanks for listening.